Gonna get down on Friday.
Episode number 9 of Relab Live. This episode we're going to talk about the difference between a $5,000 website and a $50,000 website. I wanted to talk to you more specifically about the difference between a smaller project and a bigger project. Now, in the last episode, I know I've spoken about a website and how to charge for a website design. And this is a very broad question, as I mentioned previously, and often something that people would question when they're trying to, search for an answer on how much a website would cost. Now, to give you a bit more idea and to put it a little bit more into context for you, I'd like to give you a quick explanation on how it generally works between a smaller agency or a bigger agency or a mid-sized agency, and generally it comes down to the process. But before I start, can I just give a shout out to Alan and Kevin at Pressprint, because they've given me an invitation for their new factory. It's a massive invitation, but it looks so cool. So, and most designers in Melbourne would know Pressprint, digital printers, but they do really, really cool stuff on print finishes, special finishes, and things like that, top notch. So to carry on with the topic today, I've just put two different numbers there, 5K and 50K. So that could be, a 10K versus $100,000 as well. But to give you a sense of comparisons, that's the number that we'll use for this purposes. Essentially, the difference would come down to the process and how much detail and effort has been put into that certain process. As an example, on a 5K website, or a website that we will call the 5K website, generally it will start with a conversation. So, but that is also the same case in the 50K website. Most relationships would start as a conversation. Now, I'm putting this into an example where, let's say it's a new customer, we've never worked with them before, and we're just starting the relationship. So we'll start from a conversation point of view. And then from there, usually there'll be an estimation. After that first talk of chatting with the customer, then you'll go away and you'll estimate. And oftentimes in a smaller budget work, it will be called a quote, because that's what we're used to with the word quote. So what the customer will expect out of this is, for us to go back and give you an outline of how much it will cost to build this website. And then from there, you get an approval, and then you go to work, right? And I've highlighted work with capitals there just because work could mean so much. There's so much that's involved in work, and it can be quite different depending on the scope that you have. And generally with a smaller project, once you finish the work, they would go and deploy the website straight away, and that's it. So that's pretty much the process. It won't take, ideally it wouldn't take so long because of the amount of effort that's been put in there and the level of complexity and details of the project. Generally, if it's a smaller budget website, it will be based on an off-the-shelf platform. It might be a WordPress solution or Joomla. But having said that, doesn't mean that you can't build a $50,000 website with WordPress. You can as well, just depending on the process that gets involved. Now, I won't get into too much details about the specifics of the process, but to give you an idea, with a 50K, let's say the 50K website on the other hand, again, it'll start with a conversation. Then there'll be an estimation process. When we say estimate, that means we're giving you an idea, a figure as a ballpark, a range, if you will, sometimes, a low to high, and with our case, we give you a midpoint range as well, to give you an idea of how much are we expecting to spend within this project. And usually it's not a guarantee that it is that, like the price is going to be that and then it's fixed. And that's where we try and do more discovery and scoping session. So in Relab, as previously mentioned, I'm sure in a couple of other vlogs as well, that we do things like usability testing, key stakeholders in interviews, contextual inquiry, focus group sessions and stuff like that. So all of that is part of discovery for us to understand more about the project, to be able to, I guess, effectively work on it once we start the work bit. So after discovery and scoping session, usually we'll get a clearer idea on the project itself in terms of the details, the specifications and its requirements. So once all of that is gathered, a lot is invested as well, usually on the documentation side of things. Now, actually a 50K project may or may not allow us to do that depending on the size of the work itself. But ideally you'd like to document everything. In Relab we use an Atlassian product, which is Confluence, that just allows us to document everything digitally that we're able to share with our partners and our customers as well. So it has a transparency element of it towards the documentation that we produce that eventually will become a guideline around the production work itself. Once that's all done, usually it'll give us a clearer understanding on how much this project will cost. Then we'll narrow down the price range and give you the customer an even more accurate estimate from there. Because we know more about the project. It's like we've done the diagnosis side of things, and then because we've done that, we understand what the problem or what the issue is, then we'll be able to address that with certain technologies, and we know what's involved, what type of resources and all of that, and how long it's going to take. So with all of that being combined, then we get a little bit more of an accurate estimate. Now things like that type of process generally won't be done in a smaller type of project, because maybe the company that does that smaller type of website wouldn't have to go through all of this because the budget does not allow to do that, but it may be a process that their customers don't see as necessary. So, it just depends on where the business sits. But generally, if the budget allows, then all of this is very, very important just to avoid risks, misunderstandings, and things like that down the track. Now the work comes in. Now, the work can be very, very different. So in a smaller project, the work might have 1 to, say, 3 stages. Say designing a wireframe, then let's say actually designing the website itself in terms of its visual design, and after that maybe 1 revisions, right? And in the bigger side of a project, this work can be phased into so many different stages, just because you'll have a number of iterations that's been allowed in there, a process that's a lot more thorough as well, and maybe tools that's been used in this project that wasn't used there to allow more, I guess, interactivity, say, for this type of project. Okay, so the work itself can be different. I guess the level of effort that's been spent can be very, very different. But I won't get into too much detail on that, and I'll speak about that hopefully next time. But after the work is done, or not so much done, but before it gets launched, then we'll go through a series of testing and quality assurance, user acceptance testing between us and the product owner or the customer from the customer side. Then you go into deployment, which is essentially going live or launching the website itself. And after you launch, then there's a series of testing again, which we call post-deployment testing, and making sure that everything is working seamlessly is what usually needs to happen, obviously. But hopefully that will give you a clearer idea on what the difference is between a smaller project versus a bigger one. It depends on what's needed at the end of the day by the customer. At Relab, we try to be very, very customer focused, which means in that first series of conversations, then we'll try to identify whether we're the right fit for the customer or not, whether we have the same vision, which is the most important thing. Because like I said, it's not so much about the number of the dollar value itself, but it's really what's within the scope of the works and how does that relate to our capability here. As long as we can bring value to the customer and that we can help their business, that we can collaborate together, that they see the value in working with us as well, then that's all that matters. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. I'll speak to you a little bit more about some details around the work side of things and how is it very different, or how it can be very, very different. Okay, all right, I'll speak to you soon. Thanks, guys.